Hello, and thank you for joining me today in discussing seniors against scams. My name is Allison Chakroff, and I am the Community Education Coordinator at SourcePoint. This topic is very important because many of us might have been scammed ourselves, or if we have not, we might know a person that is close to us that has experienced a scam or fraud. And it's important to note that if you haven't experienced a scam, it's very likely that there's a good chance you will face one at some point in your life. This can be as simple as a phone or an email scam, but if you don't know what to look for, the scam can spiral out of control. Some objectives that we will cover today are how much we know about scams, why you're at risk for financial exploitation, the usual suspects and types of scams, protecting yourself and loved ones from scams, and then finally, resources to reporting scams and financial abuse or exploitation. Financial scams targeting older adults have become very prevalent, and you might be asking why. And this is because older adults are thought to have a significant amount of money in their bank accounts. And financial scams often go unreported and can be difficult to prosecute. These are devastating to many older adults and can leave them in a vulnerable and actually unrecoverable position. If you lost your money in retirement, there are very few options for earning new funds to replace what is lost to a scam. Older adults ages 65 and over represent approximately 23% of the US population today, and that percentage will increase rapidly over the next decade. Individuals over 85 years are the fastest growing population, and then also are at the highest risk to experience this abuse. Older adults control a substantial amount of personal wealth in this country. Both professional con artists and family members are aware of this wealth and can take advantage of that. Low-income older adults are also at risk of financial exploitation. So always remember, it's not just the wealthy older adults who are targeted. So some important statistics here. 1 in 5 individuals in the US is aged 60 years and older. 1 in 20 older adults indicate recent financial mistreatment. Only 1 in 44 elder financial abuse cases is ever reported to law enforcement. And finally, 9% of financial abuse victims must turn to Medicaid after their own funds are stolen. So we ask, why do scammers target seniors? The first reason is greed. This explains the motivation behind elder financial exploitation by family members and scams by strangers. Fears, frailty of the aging, and then dependence on others. There's a big fear that their funds will run out during retirement. So it's important to have accountability of the funds that you have. Individuals with cognitive impairment, such as dementia, are more likely to experience abuse or neglect. And finally, isolation is a risk factor for elder abuse. Most family violence occurs behind closed doors. The elder abuse is no exception to that. Older adults self-isolate by withdrawing from their community, while others are isolated because they lose the ability to drive, see, or walk on their own. And older adults may fear being victimized by physical means such as purse snatching and muggings when they venture out into the community, and so therefore they continue to isolate. And I do want to mention here that this isolation and fear of funds has only been exacerbated due to the COVID-19 pandemic, where we are not only being told to stay home to stay safe, but also the older adults population is more vulnerable to contracting this illness. So that just further intensifies the isolation as well. So here we have a case study. We'll read through and talk about some potential answers to this case study as to what she should do. So Mrs. T receives a phone call from an unidentified number. The unknown caller identifies himself as a good friend of Mrs. T's granddaughter, who he says has been arrested while traveling out of state. The caller then tells Mrs. T that he immediately needs $10,000 to post bail for her granddaughter. The caller instructs Mrs. T to go to her bank and withdraw $10,000 in cash, place the money in a blank envelope, stuff it within the pages of a magazine, and go to the local grocery store where someone will meet her. So what was just described above is a very classic grandparent scam, in which we'll dive more into the details of those later in this training. So we might be asking ourselves, what should Mrs. T do? So some potential answers for this case study would be, Mrs. T should hang up the call and take notes about the call to provide to local authorities. Mrs. T should hang up the phone and call other family members to verify that the granddaughter is in trouble. And finally, Mrs. T may choose to no longer pick up unidentified calls. Another possible solution to this could be hanging up this phone call and directly calling the granddaughter to see if they pick up. And another option that we will discuss a little bit more in detail later is they could start asking identifying information about the granddaughter, such as name, date of birth, only information that someone who was actually in contact with the granddaughter would have. The usual suspects. So who are the likely perpetrators? And here's the thing, is it really can be anyone. It can be strangers preying on older adults who may be isolated, lonely, confused, or desperate for attention. It can be family members to whom the person wants to stay connected. And finally, it can be caregivers, whether that's family or an outside person coming in who use fear or guilt to take advantage of the senior. Some common tactics include depleting a joint checking account, promising but not delivering care in exchange for money or property, theft, and other forms of abuse, including physical abuse, threats, intimidation, and neglect of basic care needs. What's important to note here, unfortunately, over 90% of all elder abuse is committed by the older adult's relatives, which is most often their adult children, followed then by grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and others. We will now go into the different types of scams that older adults and just people in general can experience. It's important to note that scam artists are extremely skillful and that falling prey to a scam is not a sign of limited intelligence or dementia. These scams are targeted towards older adults at any income level, and those with income levels are often targets because they're more likely to need money and be willing to take the risk if something sounds too good to be true. The first scam that we'll talk about is Social Security impersonation scam. There are several variations of the Social Security impersonation scam, but all involve a scammer calling and asking for personal information, whether that is Social Security number, date of birth, mother's maiden name, and or bank account. The scammers are always looking for ways to obtain Social Security numbers. It is important to note that Social Security will rarely call you, and in those instances, the caller will provide their telephone number and extension. Also, Social Security will never send an email requesting personal information. So if you do receive that in your inbox, note that that is not a legitimate email from Social Security. Moving on to romance scams. Online dating has become another area for scamming for older adults. Scammers often create fictitious characters to trick older adults into developing a romantic relationship. And then, once a connection has been established, the scammer will create a story where they need money from the victim or need to travel to see them. They need the travel expenses covered to visit them. The scammer may also send a check to the victim to deposit or send a package on behalf of the scammer. However, the victim is unknowingly participating in a money laundering scam or shipping stolen merchandise. Scammers often use social media to create a presence and credibility as well to go along with their identities that they've created through these dating apps. Next, we move on to telemarketing and robocalls, which I'm sure we are all very familiar with. And we can sign up for those do not call lists, but we still continue to get around them. Scammers are very good at finding loopholes and finding new ways to add you to a phone call list. And this is perhaps the most common scam, in which scammers use fake telemarketing calls. With no face-to-face interaction and no paper trail, these scams are incredibly hard to trace. And once a successful deal has been made, the buyer's name is then shared with similar scammers looking for easy targets, sometimes defrauding the same person repeatedly. A lot of these scammers will make money by selling your name and phone number to other scammers, knowing that you are vulnerable. In 2003, Congress created the Do Not Call Registry to prevent telemarketers from calling all day. However, these telemarketers have developed robocalls to get around the registry. And according to the Federal Communications Commission, there are nearly 2.4 billion robocalls made every month and about 3.8 million complaints. Our next scam is the investment scheme. From pyramid schemes like Bernie Madoff, which included a number of older adult victims, to fabled Nigerian prince looking for a partner, to claim inheritance money, to complex financial products that many economists do not even understand. Investment schemes have long been a successful way to take advantage of older adults and will continue to do so. Number 5, tech support and internet fraud. Internet scams are all over the web. Pop-up browser windows stimulate virus scanning software that fools victims into either downloading the fake antivirus program or an actual virus that will allow the scammer to access the user's information on the computer. Scammers may also call you and claim to be from a well-known company or tech support, such as Best Buy. They will try to sell you antivirus protection programs and ask for a credit card number. They may also ask for your computer password to gain access to your computer, where they will install malware that provides long-term access to your personal and financial information on your computer. With scams like this, it's important to know that you have the ability to reach out to a reputable tech support resource. You don't necessarily have to wait for someone to call you. Actually, it's better to do your own research and find the most reputable business for what you need in that instance. Number 6, funeral and cemetery scams. There are 2 types of scams targeting older adults: In the first approach, scammers read obituaries and call or attend the funeral of a stranger to take advantage of the widow or widower during this really trying time for them. The scammer will claim that the deceased has an outstanding debt with them. In the other approach, funeral homes will add unnecessary charges to the bill for individuals or families who seem unaware of the costs associated with funeral services. The funeral home may also use hard pressure tactics on the family to pay for more expensive services than what is actually necessary. It's all about taking advantage of those in a very vulnerable state in which the widow or widower would be during this time. Number 7 is Medicare, Medicaid fraud, which we often hear about frequently. Most older adults age 65 and older qualify for Medicare and can enroll in a variety of Medicare plans, including Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare prescription drug plans, or Medicare supplement plans. Scammers will prey on those who may be confused about the Medicare and Medicaid coverage by posing as health insurance agents, which is very easy to fall for because there is so much information that goes on with Medicare and Medicaid, and it can be very hard to navigate. So it puts that person in a vulnerable position. So in this role, scammers will ask older adults to provide their personal and financial information over the phone, where the scammer will then create an account under that individual's name and can then apply for credit cards after that. Number 8 is home repair and contractor scams. Scammers will often drive around the neighborhood seeking homes occupied by older adults that may need some repairs. Once the victim has been targeted, the scammer will approach the home and provide the victim with an affordable quote for the proposed work. Once the victim agrees to the job, the scammer instructs the victim to pay for the work either in cash or a check written to the scammer. However, the scammer will often not complete any work or provide very sloppy repairs. Number 9 is the sweepstakes and Jamaican lottery scams. Scammers inform an older adult over the phone that they have just won the lottery or sweepstakes of some kind and need to make a payment to unlock the prize. Often, older adults will send a check that they can deposit in their bank account, knowing that while it shows up in their account immediately, it will take a few days before the fake check is rejected. During that time, the scammers will quickly collect money for the supposed fees or taxes on the prize while the victim has the quote-unquote prize money removed from his or her bank account as soon as that check bounces. Over the past few years, a growing number of sweepstakes scams have originated from Jamaica, where scammers will call from an area code such as 876, which is the country code from Jamaica. The scammers will tell the victim that they have won a new car or lottery and must send hundreds of dollars through a prepaid debit card, money order, or wire transfer to claim the prize. The scammers use lead lists to identify their victims, which also includes satellite images of the victims' homes and neighborhoods. The scammers will also track past victims to identify their new homes if they have moved and reestablish contact with the victim. Recent estimates state that Jamaican scammers made approximately 30,000 phone calls and have stolen about $300 million annually. And that is according to the United States Senate Special Committee on Aging. And finally, as we discussed earlier in the grandparent scam case study that we did, the grandparent scam is so simple and underrated because it uses one of an older adult's most reliable asset, and that's their heart. Scammers will place a call to an older adult, and when the line is picked up, they will say something along the lines of, "Hi, Grandma, do you know who this is?" When the unsuspecting grandparent guesses the name of the grandchild that the scammer most sounds like, the scammer has established that fake identity. And once they're in, the fake grandchild will usually ask for money to solve some sort of unexpected financial problem, to be paid via Western Union or MoneyGram, which they don't always require identification to collect. At the same time, the scam artist will beg the grandparent, "Please don't tell my parents, they will kill me." While the sums of such a scam are likely to be in the hundreds, the very fact that no research is needed makes this a scam that can be perpetrated over and over and over at very little cost to the scammer, and that's why it's so popular. After the scammer has received the money, he or she will not return the victim's call stating that they did not receive the legal fees. The frequency of these scams has been increasing over the past few years. In 2017, the Federal Trade Commission received approximately 18,912 complaints, and over a 2-year period, there was reported $42 million in losses. So now that we know the scams that are targeting seniors, how do we avoid these scams? Some tips for avoiding these tech support and internet fraud scams. It's important to never give out your password security information to a third party in which you did not contact. They are calling you unsolicited. If you have concerns about a slow-running computer or errors on an antivirus updating, it is important for you to contact the tech support number on your specific software package. And sometimes there are good local computer tech companies in your area. Very important to contact the Better Business Bureau to find out which companies are rated well and trusted well. And this can be done via phone call, or you can find them online through the Better Business Bureau. Some tips for avoiding funeral and cemetery costs. It is important to never agree to anything over the phone until you've had a chance to read it in writing. Also, never agree to pressure calls or pressure sales. Get everything in writing, take it home, and review it first. You can always, when you're on the phone with someone, state that I need time to think about this, I will get back to you. So again, important, don't agree to pressure sales. And again, check out the Better Business Bureau. If someone states they represent an organization that your loved one did business with, tell them to send it to you in writing for review. Always get things in writing for your documentation. Tips for avoiding Medicare scams. It's really important to protect your Medicare number as you would the same as your credit card numbers, and don't allow anyone else to use it. Be wary of salespeople trying to sell you something they claim will be paid for by Medicare. Review your Medicare statements to be sure you have in fact received the services billed. This can be done on the Medicare website, the same as you would review your bank statements. Report suspicious activities to 1-800-MEDICARE. And finally, contact your local senior Medicare patrol program, and that website is listed right there. Some tips for avoiding home repair and contractor scams. Never do business with someone that just shows up at your door unsolicited. And never pay for a whole job up front. Wait until all of the work is complete and expected. It is normal for contractors to expect a down payment, but you never want to give them their whole price that they are charging, because it could happen that they either do a sloppy job and they still have your money, or they do no job at all. If you would like to pursue an offer that you get, make sure to get the name of the business, telephone and physical location of the company and tell them you will call them back. You'll likely be fought on that a little bit, saying, well, this deal is only good for today or within the next hour, but do not fall to those high pressure sales tactics, and make sure to check them out with the Better Business Bureau. Again, get it in writing. And to contact the Better Business Bureau, their phone number is listed there, which is 804-648-0016, or again, you can go online at bbb.org to search any business to see their ratings and reviews. Tips for avoiding sweepstakes and lottery scams. So it's important to know that legitimate lotteries and sweepstakes will take the taxes and other fees out of your winning before you receive it. So no reputable place should be asking you to make a payment, because they should be taking that out of your winnings. Also important, you cannot win if you did not play. So if you are getting a call and you know for a fact that you have never entered a sweepstakes or a lottery, know that there's no way that you could have won that. While the prize might be exciting and enticing, it's like, oh my gosh, I could really use this money. Just know you cannot win if you did not play. And also pertaining to the Jamaican lottery scams that we talked about earlier, the United States citizens cannot play and win foreign lotteries. It is illegal. So keep that in mind if you ever get a phone call, and you can state that right away, like, I know that this is illegal for me to win because I am a U.S. citizen. Tips for avoiding grandparent scams. Hang up and call your grandchild or parent of the grandchild from a number that you know. If you feel compelled to listen, and that's natural, that's human nature, and you are worried this may be real, start asking a lot of identifying questions like, what is your sister's name? Or what is your great aunt's name? Ask something that a scammer would not have information to, and it would be very hard for them to give a generic answer. And some families will actually set up a password or a code word that only they know, and in times of emergency situations, like the case study that we talked about, like they're in need of money ASAP, you can ask your quote unquote grandchild for this family password, and that scammer would not be able to answer that. Moving on to protecting yourself and your loved ones. So now we have all of this information on what scams are out there, but what's really important is to know that there are ways to protect yourself and your loved ones. So it is important to note that there is a connection between financial scams and identity theft. The most common motivation for an identity thief is to ultimately gain access to your banking and other accounts, lines of credits, and other financial resources. A helpful tip here is make sure when you're pumping gas not to use a PIN number on your debit card. You can always run your debit card as a credit card. Scammers will set up devices on or near the pump to steal PIN numbers, which in return makes it very easy to steal your cash. And also important to never leave mail in the mailbox for long periods of time. This leaves you open for identity theft as well. So if you are going on vacation, or you know that you will not be home for some amount of time, you can go to the U.S. Post Office website and put a hold on your mail. So in looking at the actual definitions, identity theft is without your consent, someone using your personal information, whether that's your social security number, your credit card, or driver's license number, to access your accounts, to open up new accounts, or apply for loans or mortgages, and this is a crime. Now, Medicare identity theft is without your consent, someone using your personal and health insurance information to get medical treatment, prescription drugs, or surgery. So again, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important for you to keep an eye on your statements, whether that's through a personal health insurance policy or if that's Medicare related as well, to always verify the statements. Some common ways to steal identity. One is shoulder surfing. So this is someone looking over your shoulder as you fill out forms, or using your PIN at an ATM or a gas station, as I mentioned earlier, or they could be listening to you give your credit card number over the phone. Dumpster diving. A lot of people have made jokes about this in the past, but it is a very real thing. And this is someone going through garbage for copies of your checks and credit card or bank statements, or for pre-approved credit card mailings in order to activate the cards. And with this, I always encourage people to make an investment in a shredder to have at your home. It doesn't have to be a heavy duty one. It can be even a little handheld one. But it's important that you are always destroying mail that is coming into your home that has any of your personal information available. And phishing scams. These are emails that appear to be from a legitimate company or institution like the IRS, asking you to update or verify your personal information. So ways to protect your identity. Like I said, invest in and then actually use a paper shredder. It's so important to destroy anything that has your personal information on it. Monitor your bank and credit card statements. This is crucial and sometimes forgotten. Living in such a digital world, it's like, okay, I'm doing this all online. Everything looks okay, but then if you actually take the time to look through your statements, you might see $1 here, $5 here, $10 here, another $1, and you know for a fact you did not make those purchases. Those can add up real quick, and that is actually a tactic that a lot of scammers will use, because you do not as readily notice if you're losing $1 or so at a time, rather than a big chunk of money. So again, important to take the time to monitor those statements. Stamp out identity theft with an ID guard stamp. Do not fall for phishing scams. When in doubt, call the institution the email claims to have come from, or research the potential scam online. A lot of the times, if you receive a illegitimate email, if you search that in Google, like what that email is titled, or maybe a statement that's in the email body and the word scam afterwards, there are other people posting about this as well. And if you are seeing that other people are making the same complaint, odds are, yes, that is a scam. Beware of telephone scams. It's important to never give out personal information over the phone to someone who initiates the contact. So this is unsolicited to you. And be careful with your mail. Again, don't let your incoming mail sit in your mailbox for a long time. And when sending out sensitive mail, consider dropping it off at a secure collection box or directly at the post office instead of placing it in your mailbox to be picked up later. If you suspect that you're a victim of identity theft, it's important to immediately contact your banks and credit card companies. Do not wait to do this. You can file a report with the police. The police may not be able to do much themselves, but the police or sheriff should be able to point you in a direction and help you report in order to clear up the problem. File with the FTC by using its online complaint form at www.ftc.gov, or call their theft hotline at 1-877-ID-THEFT. And put out a fraud alert to the credit reporting agencies such as Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Here are the top 8 ways to protect yourself. Be aware that you're at risk from strangers and the persons that are closest to you. Try your best not to isolate yourself. Stay engaged, stay involved with community activities, and stay in communications with those trusted friends and family members. Always tell solicitors, I never buy from or give to anyone who calls or visits me unannounced. Send me something in writing. Shred all receipts with your credit card number. This goes along with your mail and your personal information. You can sign up for the Do Not Call list at 1-888-382-1222 and take yourself off of multiple mailing lists. Use direct deposit for benefit checks. It makes that a little less easy for scammers to gain access to. Never give out personal information such as your credit card, banking information, Social Security, Medicare, or any other personal information over the phone unless you yourself initiated that call. And be skeptical of all unsolicited offers. Always take your time to do your research and figure out if this is a reputable company and if you really want to be doing business with them. So there are many steps that you can take to protect yourself and reduce the risk of elder abuse starting today, which include being aware of the risk of elder financial abuse, staying active and involved with others throughout their lives, including safeguards and their durable power of attorney to help prevent those being misused by their name agent, refusing to engage anyone who calls or comes to your door selling anything or asking for donations. Neighborhood children they know selling Girl Scout cookies or school fundraising items may be the exception, but a good rule of thumb is never donate if it requires you to write down any credit card information on any form. Using direct deposit to ensure that checks go right into their accounts and are protected. Clever scammers and loved ones have been known to steal benefit checks right out of the mailbox or from older adults' homes if they're laying around, especially if that older adult is in need of a caregiver and needs assistance with basic human needs and functions. Only use phone numbers listed on statement accounts, not any numbers given to you by callers to verify that the agencies did not contact you. So, while it is important to protect yourself always, it's also important to know the signs to look for to protect your loved ones. Unusual recent changes in a person's account. So you want to be on the lookout for this. This is including any untypical, atypical withdrawals, if you notice a new person is added, or sudden use of senior's ATM or credit card when you know that they have not been out using it. The person suddenly appears confused or unkempt and afraid. If this is not common for that person, do a little digging, find some more information to see if there is a reason that they are suddenly confused or afraid. If utility, rent, mortgage, medical, and other essential bills are unpaid despite adequate income, and they're usually paid on time, that could be a warning sign. If the caregiver will not allow others access to the senior, if they're kind of hiding them for their own in fear that they will tell them what that scammer or perpetrator is doing, that is a big warning sign. And then also piled up sweepstake mailings, magazine subscriptions, or free gifts. This often means that they are on a quote unquote sucker list. As we talked about earlier, if someone falls for a scam, many times scammers will sell that person's information and more scammers will come in and add them to their mailing and calling list as well. So next steps for victims of financial fraud. I really want to emphasize to not be afraid or embarrassed to talk about it. Waiting actually could make things much, much worse. And while it might seem embarrassing to your intelligence that you have fallen for financial fraud, it is very, very common, and scams are easy to fall for. Scammers are smart. They know how to take advantage of others. They know what will work, and they've been doing this for years. So the more we talk about it, the more we can spread awareness and hopefully help prevent future scams from happening to those that we care about as well. It's important to immediately call your bank and or credit card company, cancel any debit or credit cards linked to the stolen account, reset all of your personal identification numbers, and again, call the police and file a report. Even if they cannot do anything in that moment, they will help steer you in a direction to make that report and hopefully return some of your money, even though that is not always possible. But the sooner we get this information reported, the more likely it could be that you could receive your funds that you lost. Contact legal services and adult protective services. So this is really important. That's why APS is there. It's important to contact them with issues like this. And to find your local offices, you can call the Elder Care Locator toll free at 1-800-677-1116 any weekday from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Also, get to know your banker and build a relationship with the people who handle your finances. They can be on the lookout for any suspicious activity related to your account as well. So that is the end of our presentation. I do want to note that all of this information is to empower you. It's not to necessarily scare you or make you isolate, which we know from earlier in the training that we do not want to completely isolate ourselves. This is information for you to help protect yourself and those that you care about. Unfortunately, scammers and perpetrators are out there, and they will continue to be out there. And the only way that we can truly make a difference and help eliminate some of these scammers is by reporting them. So while it might be difficult, it's important to file that report and also make sure that all of your accounts are in order and that you're keeping an eye on all statements. So thank you for participating in this training, and always be on the lookout for any signs of scams or financial exploitation for yourself and relatives, and remind them that although they are at risk, although you are at risk, there is so much that you can do to protect yourself. So again, my name is Allison Chakroff, Community Education Coordinator at SourcePoint. And on behalf of SourcePoint, I want to thank you for joining in on this presentation on Seniors Against Scams.